Welcome to the Gilded Heiresses. I'm your host, Julie Montague, Countess of Sandwich and Gilded Age historian. And today, we venture into all things education. Our subject? The finishing schools and female academies that shaped the futures of elite young women during the Gilded Age. These institutions taught deportment over mathematics and embroidery over science, all with one goal in mind: to take the next generation of wealth and polish it into poise. But beneath the lessons in grace lay ambition, social strategy, and sometimes, surprisingly, genuine academic rigor. So, what did finishing school really prepare an heiress for in a world of pressure, performance, and prominence? Let's find out. In the early 19th century, wealthy American families sent daughters to female academies or seminaries. Schools like the Litchfield Female Academy, founded in 1792, welcomed students from elite and even middling families, teaching not only needlework and art, but also moral development, religious studies, and literary analysis. As the century progressed and fortunes expanded, especially among the American industrial class, these institutions evolved. By the late 1800s, parents were no longer simply looking for daughters who could read Virgil. No, they wanted daughters who could charm at dinner, curate drawing room conversation, and display impeccable manners across multiple languages. Thus, the finishing school was born. These elite, often European institutions shifted the educational priority toward presentation, offering instruction in deportment, etiquette, household management, languages, and music. To put it plainly, students were taught the necessary skills to attract and keep a good husband. Good, of course, meaning wealthy, educated, and connected. Academic subjects quickly faded into the background. Here, education was less about individual fulfillment and more about social positioning. For many families, particularly the nouveau riche, finishing schools became a stepping stone into high society. They were part of a calculated social strategy, a way to legitimize their wealth with taught refinement and give their daughters the opportunity to mingle with the upper crust from all corners of Europe. So, what exactly did one study at a finishing school? At elite institutions, the curriculum could include lessons in posture, voice modulation, letter writing, polite conversation, languages such as French and Italian, embroidery, dancing, instruments like the harp or piano, and the art of hosting parties. Deportment books instructed girls how to sit, how to exit a carriage gracefully, and even how to refuse a marriage proposal with dignity. Miss Porter's School in Connecticut, founded in 1843, became a model of this blend. It emphasized charm, grace, loyalty, and stoicism, creating daughters capable of entering society with confidence and enduring its many pressures. Its graduates included women like Jackie Kennedy, who would later become icons of public composure and social grace. Yet not all finishing schools were quite so demure. Some institutions combined this outward polish with more serious studies, such as philosophy, history, languages, and even limited science. Earlier academies, like Miss Dana's School in Morristown, for example, provided instruction in classical subjects, preparing girls for colleges like Vassar. But even at these progressive schools, a strong undercurrent remained. Women's futures were to be lived out in the parlor, not the parliament. By the early 1900s, Switzerland had become synonymous with the elite finishing school experience. Its picturesque surroundings and cosmopolitan flair made it a preferred destination for families across Britain, America, Russia, and beyond. Institutions like the renowned Institut Villa Pierrefeu, one of the most prestigious in the world, catered to the ultra-wealthy, offering a curriculum steeped in international etiquette, luxury household management, and cross-cultural social graces. Students were immersed in languages, music, fine arts, and above all, the rituals of upper-class femininity. While rarely academic in nature, these schools trained their pupils to move fluidly through the ballrooms of Europe, the drawing rooms of London, and of course, the private salons of Fifth Avenue. Graduating from such a school signified cultural literacy, not just education. It showed that a young woman could not only acquire refinement, but also embody it. However, not every elite girl was packed off to Switzerland. In the United States, boarding schools like the Emma Willard School and Mount Holyoke Female Seminary offered rigorous academic programs in mathematics, philosophy, and science. Founded in the early 19th century, these institutions served as precursors to the women's liberal arts colleges of the late Gilded Age. These schools fostered intellectual ambition, even as social convention expected their graduates to marry, host, and preserve propriety. The tension between intellectual fulfillment and social destiny was never fully resolved, but at least some daughters left with more than a curtsy under their belt. And for ambitious families, the Seven Sisters Colleges, Vassar, Wellesley, and Bryn Mawr, offered a respectable compromise: intellectual training without jeopardizing social status. So why were finishing schools so important? Because marriage in the Gilded Age, more often than not, wasn't a personal affair. No, it was business, politics, and investment all melted into a gold band. A young woman's ability to charm, manage a household, and navigate elite society could make or break a family's social aspirations. Finishing schools provided access to social networks as much as they provided skill sets. Daughters forged friendships that would later become social alliances. Hostesses took note of well-groomed graduates. Society pages tracked debutantes from Switzerland to Newport. To be polished was to be prepared for life as a society wife, a philanthropic leader, or occasionally a diplomatic partner. Finishing schools didn't just teach girls how to pour tea. They taught them how to hold court. But these institutions were never without criticism. Some viewed them as bastions of frivolity that lacked intellectual depth. Others saw them as mere vehicles of social climbing, routes for wealthy but less cultured families to secure their daughters' social standing through bought manners and social skills. Supporters insisted they prepared young women to wield power quietly but effectively. And yet, many graduates went on to lead philanthropic efforts, fund social reforms, and shape public opinion. The training may have been conservative, but its graduates sometimes proved anything but. But by the mid-20th century, traditional finishing schools began to close. The rise of the women's movement, changing social attitudes, and new educational priorities made their model feel outdated. But their legacy endures. Elements of the finishing school ideal, such as grace under pressure, embracing traditional femininity, and social fluency, still persist in elite private schools, debutante traditions, and even the branding of modern poise classes today. Villa Pierrefeu remains one of the last finishing schools operating in its original model. Yet today's graduates are as likely to become diplomats or entrepreneurs as they are to become duchesses. Because if there's one lesson the Gilded Age taught its daughters, it's this: polish isn't the opposite of power. Sometimes it's just the performance of it. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Gilded Heiresses. I'm Julie Montague, Countess of Sandwich. Until next time.